all of these voices that we talk about, the addiction voice, the eating disorder voice, the should monster voice, these prophets and these threatening voices, they all fall under that umbrella of bully. They basically control us like good bullies do, which is, you don't talk back to a bully. You hand your power over to a bully just like you hand your lunch money over to a bully. That's what the fear is we need to be in recovery from. And it's such a big deal. One of the many definitions we could give for emotional sobriety: not being controlled by fear.
Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote in 1952, "If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand." Wilson suggested that if we could identify and continually surrender these unrealistic and unrealizable demands, that we may then be able to accomplish what he imagined to be the recovery's next frontier, something he called emotional sobriety. Flash forward 70 years and join psychotherapists and best-selling authors Thom Rutledge and Dr. Allen Berger, who have taken up the mantle of exploring Bill Wilson's new frontier. Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
Welcome to Emotional Sobriety, the podcast, as opposed to Emotional Sobriety, the lifestyle, maybe, I guess. I'm Thom Rutledge, and I'm here with producer Patrick Newman. I believe Dr. Allen Berger is missing in action today. So far, unless he shows up somewhere along the line, you and I can carry this.
Yeah, there might be a Han Solo swooping in at the last minute as we're in the Death Star trenches. Allen Berger resurgence. But I think it's going to be Thom and I for today. How's it going?
You hate to be cliche and talk about weather, but the weather's been so difficult and hot. We've had some break in that. We've had some rain, and have actually been able to walk around in the world outside and not feel like I have to come back in and immediately, admit to being an old man and have to lie down and and put the fan on me. So it's like I'm feeling like myself again.
So it's been good weather over there.
Yeah. It's been nice. It's like it's rain. It's rained some, and it's been the there's rain and there's a good kind of rain. There's just that steady rain that just, it sounds good. It sounds nice. It's like the kind of stuff you ought to sit on the porch and listen to and watch.
Well, for me, there was a lightning storm that I found out from a guy at the grocery afterwards. Lightning storm in Las Vegas that we could see from our front yard in Yucca Valley, California, that literally looked like an evil sorcerer was, attacking the city, because it was just no thunder, no rain. I'm in a desert, but it was just this this strobe of looked like hundreds of lightning bolts just hitting. And I got it on video. I got to send it to some people. But,
man, how close are you to Vegas?
I'm not good with metrics, but maybe an hour and a half drive.
So the reason this is one of those deals where you can see this is because there's nothing obstructing your view. It's just that flat between where you are in Vegas.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was bizarre. And as far as weather on my end, I'm in a place where I find myself when I turn the faucet on, looking at it worriedly, because I have a fear that I'm going to run out of water, that I won't have any place to go, being out here, dying in a fire, running out of water. These are things that occur to me while living out here in the desert. I
always say, that one of the things that I tell people all the time, that it's okay to use other people's situations that are worse than ours to reinforce our own gratitude. People will feel guilty about doing that sometimes, but I go no, you're not wishing anything. I don't wish that on you. But what I can do is when I go, if I'm going to go take a shower in a little bit, it's like I can be grateful that I don't have to worry about that.
Lather up extra for me.
it's like I'm a scavenger for gratitude. It's like the more things I can, I just need to be reminded. It's like it's so growing up in a home. And this is probably a good segue, because you and I talked about wanting to. You had mentioned that one subject that hadn't at least shown up. I'm sure it's been here all along, but it hadn't shown up in any of our titles. Is fear. And I appreciate that you graciously also pointed out that one of my better selling books is called Embracing Fear with HarperCollins, and so you suggested we talk about that. And it's like that fear is at the base of all of this stuff, and definitely including all that negativity. And I going to go back to what I was saying is I grew up in a family that, if negativity were an Olympic event, we would be gold medalists. And of course, the punchline to that one is, and we wouldn't think it's good. We would find that there's some downside to that.
It'd be like they'd hand us the medal and then like whip us over the head with it or something.
We just go. We would just see the downside. My mom would have been a great teacher about this. It's like, with the pressure that's going to come with that, and the expectations that people are going to have now, and it's like, it's so. And I've been. See, I started to say we've all known people like that. I've been that person where it's like it's actually pretty fascinating how quickly you can move to a positive. And as I was talking to a client just the other day that was doing this, and I was pointing out to her how there's a success, and it's almost like within one sentence they've gone on to the next projected downside or negative. And it's like, and usually it is the projection, because that's what fear does. Fear is at least the unhealthy fear, teaches us to look into the future about all the things that might go wrong. And very often that particular fear voice will tell you they won't speak to it like, well, it's possible that this go wrong. It'll say it probably will, and so at any rate, when I think about negativity, one of the things I realized through my process is that my own negativity, was I learned it from my family. It was passed along through probably generations of the way people think and communicate. But ultimately, it's a defense. It's a defense that we can track back to fear. It's like, if I can, and you and I've kind of talked about this at one point, is the idea if we keep our expectations so low, like I always say, lie flat on the floor, and you can say the sentence, from here I don't have very far to fall. It's like, well, it's true, but you're not, but at what cost? And so the idea is, when we want to get in emotional sobriety is the perfect context, I think, to talk about this, because if you want to get past that negative voice in our head, that part of us that is always holding us back with I sometimes refer to it as like the prophet, that's always prophesying all these negative things that are likely to happen. And of course, another part of that is the negative voice that's always that's just reinforcing negative thoughts about ourselves. All of that is, everybody's different, but this is a generalization to make the point. All of that is basically, if I'm that voice to you, then what I'm trying to do is keep you from taking risks. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we can look at that, and you can look at it sometimes you can look at that and see it. You can see it from one angle and go like, well, that's just mean and cruel. Well, okay, but a lot of times you look in there that you can even find that positive intent. It's like, I'm trying, I'm not going to do this. It's I was, that's a friend of mine before I wrote my first book. He's the one pointed out to me. He said, Thom, you're hiding out in potential. He says, you're, as long as you don't take the risk of actually writing the book, you're always going to be potentially a great writer. He said,
this is a good friend who told you this.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, and he said, he's the one, and I think about him at the beginning of every single project. It's like, he said, if you want to write a great book or a good book, or he says, you're going to have to be willing to write a piece of shit. Mm-hmm. And it's like, of course, that, I can still to this day feel my chest tighten when I remember hearing him say that, but absolutely have integrated that into my life. It's like the idea, and it's not less scary. And see, this is one of the things I want to say about fear, and we'll connect it here to emotional sobriety. The fear it's we don't get rid of fear any more than we get rid of anything. We talk about this, Alan and I, and you talk about this all the time. It's like one of the big mistakes we make in personal growth is thinking I need to stop thinking this way, or we'll use the term like with addiction or with the should monster in our head. I need to get rid of it. I need it to shut up. And I'm not one who points to always to language and say, well, you can't ever say you should, or you can't, we're going to use the language, but we have to understand what we mean by getting rid of it is changing our relationship to it so that fear, self-criticism, condemnation, whatever that voice is leading with, does not control us. Healthy fear is, it's part of motivation. If the bear's at the door, you go out the back door. It's like, but more on the day-to-day thing. If I'm afraid because I have a project due and I'm not prepared, well, that healthy fear is going to be there. That's going to be nudging me, pushing me, for me, sometimes shoving me, saying, you need to get busy. You need to get this done. You need to do this. Or if I'm one of the things that I can say I have a healthy fear about is that keeps me going is basically just keeping up with my my administrative kinds of work. And I'm not very good at that. But the idea, if I didn't have the healthy fear that said, it's not, basically it's a violation of my value system to basically not fulfill responsibilities that are my responsibility. So that helps. But those aren't the fears that cause problems for us. The fears that cause problems for us are the ones that predict all these negative, horrible things. With embracing fear, what I do is I use the metaphor of the healthy fear is our ally, the one that's going to help us to and ultimately the biggest fear that we have from the ally, from the part of us that's on our side, is really the fear of not living according to our own value system, not being our best self. It's like, that's the healthiest fear I can think of, is that I'm not living up to my potential. And I don't mean perfection. I mean, just the idea of not being the best version of myself that I could be in this moment. That's the healthiest kind of fear. But the fear, the other fear, that I began with this book, Embracing Fear, I began to use just the idea of a bully, because I realized that all of these voices that we talk about, the addiction voice, the eating disorder voice, the should monster voice, these prophets and these threatening voices, they all fall under that umbrella of bully. They basically control us like good bullies do, which is, you don't talk back to a bully. You hand your power over to a bully just like you hand your lunch money over to a bully. That's what the fear is we need to be in recovery from. And it's such a big deal. One of the many definitions we could give for emotional sobriety, not being controlled by fear.
When you're working with somebody who has a crippling dose of fear, because I always think about this, like, you can't at least initially appeal to rationality necessarily to get them to say they're afraid of the sunlight, getting them to walk, getting them to come outside and take a walk in the park. Like, how does one begin to coax somebody towards overcoming, I guess you could call it their bully, that's telling them irrationally that you're going to get vaporized if you walk outside in the sunlight.
Right. Well, I mean, it's yeah, and I mean, I think the reason those kinds of things are good examples because those are very tangible. Like somebody who is agoraphobic, who is afraid of. Interesting. Your version of agoraphobia would be that, of course, you're living in the desert. Of course, you have the fear of being vaporized.
Yeah.
We might have to rethink that, Patrick. That might be one of the healthy fears. It's like, no, Patrick, don't go outside.
Yeah, it doesn't just happen to vampires anymore.
That's right. That's right. No, I mean, it's and I, a lot of people who have those kinds of fears, a lot of that is sort of immersion therapy or exposure therapy, where you don't just like you said, you don't just appeal to the rational by, because if you just jump in there and say, okay, but look, here's what the truth is, then whether you intend it to be that or not, it just feels like a criticism. It feels like because I mean, we can always do that. I've certainly done that in my marriage, where it's like I realize thinking what I'm saying to my wife can be translated as, if you would just think like I am telling you to think, you would no longer have that fear. It's like, well, okay, that might be the case, but it's like that's not respectful of the process of that intrapersonal process that person is going through. Because if that was the case, all we would ever need to do is just find somebody who's got a better perspective on it. You know, I can tell you what I'm afraid of, and you could pan back and say that no, that's not true because of this. It's like, and it would be all over. So you have to. What you're suggesting is absolutely right. You go slower, and my way of thinking is what we try to do. The best therapy that I know is, get in there and ask questions. I don't mind telling them what my perspective is. I'm just not there to push my perspective on them, because most people who have something like that, they actually, they know that it's not literally true. It's like if I have eating disorder clients who perceive themselves, who are restrictive eating disorder clients who perceive themselves as radically larger than they actually are. It's like if families are often frustrated with family members like that, because and I tell families, it doesn't matter how much you talk to them. It doesn't matter how many times you get them to look in the mirror. They're not going to just automatically see what you see. We have to understand what's behind that fear, and that's really where that begins. I think is we're finding out, okay, what is, because sometimes those fears are almost, well, not almost, they're symbolic. It's like their fear of their, and obviously vaporizing is a pretty easy one to make that translation, but a lot of pretty pedestrian fears can be tracked down to really fears of annihilation. In the book, I use a cognitive process I call going down the ladder. It's like, I'm afraid that I'm going to be in trouble at my job. Okay. Rather than reassure somebody at that moment, it's about when you put reassurance in, you take them down the ladder. Okay. Well, if you lose your job, if you do badly at your job, what happens? Well, I lose my job. Okay. Rather than argue that point, I say, if you lose your job, what happens? Well, my wife is upset with me, and she will leave me. Okay. If your wife is upset with you and leaves you, then what happened? I'm all alone, and and I don't have a job, and I'm on the street, and okay. And so at that point, anybody's going to be tempted to try to reassure and kind of correct some things. But I go ahead and stay a little longer if I can, and just say, okay, so if you're all alone on the street, don't have a job, your wife has left you, what happens? And I'm thinking of a particular example where somebody, I don't remember if this was exactly the way they got to it, but they got to this part where they said, then I have wasted my life. And see, it's because sometimes when I look for, sometimes people will go, I will, it'll get down with just a few rungs down the ladder, and I'll die, and so that, we think, okay, well, wow, that's no wonder you're so afraid, because you have that connection. But more often than not, I think it comes up to wasted life. It comes to one of our biggest fears is the lack of purpose and lack of meaning. And it's funny how without ever even thinking about it, just tracking that down will take us to that place. So here's a person who messed up something at their job, and so we're sitting there talking to the person and saying, well, they sure seem to be overreacting to this situation, because it seems like a resolvable problem. But if you go through the process of going down the ladder, you realize unconsciously and that's what you're doing, is you're helping that person see that unconsciously their fear of having messed up at the job is the fear of having no purpose and having wasted a life. And it's like that, and that I have a name for that. I call that the illusion of overreaction. It's like on the surface, when you just have the content of the present tense, it looks completely like an overreaction. If you go inside and look and see what the person is actually responding to, it's like you go, oh, no, what and that's one of the things I'd love to help people be able to see in dealing with their fear is, you make perfect sense. When you think about your life being wasted, of course you have that huge response.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
The Emotional Sobriety project, in regards to this, dealing with fear, it's, number one, physical sobriety helps because you have the full tool set. And then it's identify which of these parts of yourselves are in conversation with each other, and then parsing that, so you can really kind of get it, like the truth beneath everything. Like, some of these second or third order fears, they're kind of like holograms,
Carol Carter can tell you about this, because she's actually helped me with this quite a bit through the time I've known her. Is that I have this recurring fear of my own, which is that what I teach about intrapersonal process is just ridiculously simple and offensively simple. It's like, and I think that, so there's a little guy in my head that just goes like, everybody knows this. You're making too big a deal of this thing. But what Carol has helped me see, and what I continue to work with and see, is that no, everybody doesn't know this. And even though you have the concept, the practice of it is knowing it's one thing, doing it is another thing. But I am reminded regularly, like this week, I had a client in my office who's got an internal voice we've tried many different names, but he's landed on the name dipshit, which I think is a great name.
I like it.
It's like, yeah. And this guy is really he's just sabotaging everything, and sabotaging relationship stuff in particular. He just throws out anything he can just to scare the crap out of this guy. And so we're working on just making that separation. And so this little simple example is so I'm sitting in the office, and I'm saying, you're still not seeing the difference between you and dipshit. And and so he said, okay, well, help me do that. And he's sitting there, and I have there's a little stool over to, kind of partly in front of him. And I look up on my shelf of, I've been in this office for 30 something years, and all kinds of stuff up there. And I see a little figurine of Alfred E. Newman of Mad Magazine. Yeah. So I just take that little guy. He's just, he's probably about 6 inches tall. And I just stand him on that stool and go like, okay, you dipshit. Okay. This is dipshit over here. And it's like, just spending the rest of the time, we didn't necessarily even refer to him. We didn't do any big time Gestalt process or anything like that, but just making a distinction in the 3-dimensional world of that room began to make a difference for him. And we'll see how that goes, because I think it's going to. But it's like, on his way out the door, I said, I mean, do you want to take dipshit with you? And I mean, you would have, if you just saw that scene, it would be weird because his recoiling was so obvious. It was like, it's a little figurine.
It's like Chucky.
Yeah, it's like he goes, no, leave him here. I go, okay, well, as long as you understand that we can leave this here symbolically, but know that he's coming with you. Because I want people, the most important thing we want to do about dealing with fear is understand we're going to be realistic about this. We don't get rid of fear. We change our relationship with fear. We don't get rid of any of these things. We change our relationship. And ultimately, the shortcut to you were talking about how we learn this stuff about our intrapersonal, who's talking to whom and all this other stuff. And there's a lot of that. But ultimately, the shortcut to me is simply me, not me. It's like what we're ultimately identifying all of these different voices for. And, and I remind people regularly, it's like when they some people will get a little bit more nervous and they think, oh, I feel crazy because now we're talking about voices in my head. I go, they're not voices. And this is a metaphor. And the good news about metaphor is we can change it in any way that works for you. But most importantly, what we're doing is we're defining we're making a distinction, to go back to the emotional sobriety terminology, a differentiation between who I am and what my thoughts are. Okay. Now it works well for me to personify them into little characters and do it that way. And that seems to work a lot for a lot of people to be able to do that. And so we do that, unless that turns out not to be a very helpful thing for somebody. But the idea is, all of those characters are identified for one primary reason, is to figure out who I am not, so that I can then focus on who I am. And who I am is very simply the person who chooses, who's in, you hear me say this all the time. I may not be in control of much, but I'm in charge of my life. And it's like I'm in charge of the decisions. So I can have any number of thoughts, and I will have multiple thoughts. The more important the issue, the more thoughts I may have about it. And some of them may be disagreeing with each other. But ultimately, Thom is the person who makes the choices. Patrick is the person who makes the choices. And and again, that's one of those nutshell definitions of emotional sobriety. It's like, no, you're in charge. You're not blaming somebody else. You're not, and I love watching your cat play in the background.
Oh,
by the way, he is like a little pinball. I just have to say that out loud because I know that I'm being distracted by it. But
oh yeah, I love him to pieces.
Yeah, he's sweet. It's
Eckhart Tolle, right? It's you are not the voice in your head, you're the one listening to the voice.
That's right.
That blew my mind when I read it.
Yeah, it's that simple. It's like the idea is, it's like, who are you? It's like I'm the one, I'm the one listening, I'm the one hearing, but I also am the one responding. And so, and to me, and I think I mean, I don't know that anybody has a corner on this market, but I've been, when I enjoy reading the philosophy of Stoicism, and I always say the Stoics have, like, what I think of is probably the briefest serenity prayer, which is, the only thing I control is me. But there's a little piece in there that I have, I don't think it's brand new to me, but I really have strengthened it through the process of a pursuit of emotional sobriety. And that is, it's easier to know that I understand that it's my choice how I choose to respond outwardly, interpersonally. But the other piece about this, and this I get a lot from, I read this and I feel this when I'm reading the Stoicism, but I also get it, I could read an Alan Berger book and get this as well. It's the idea is I also have choice about how I interpret the world. And see, that's the part that I think that we end up focusing on. I know we do in emotional sobriety. It's like, it's because we too often just accept our interpretation, but our interpretation is contaminated by these other voices that are not necessarily our best self. Does that make sense?
It does. And, I need to always bring the spotlight back onto myself when I give other people advice, or when I'm, talking with other people through their problems, because I think that we all have the tendency, or I'll just speak for myself, I have the tendency to have like well, just get over it. Or, if you just thought about it this way, it's like you were saying in your conversations with your wife, is that like, if you just thought about it the way that I thought about it, then you'd be able to overcome this problem. This idea of not thinking my way to right action, but acting my way to right thinking. Yes. It's only very recently, very, very recently, the last couple of years, that I've been able to wring anything out of that. I've known about having a daily practice for a while, but it took me a long ass time to finally, like, get myself into a state where I'm actually like doing the deal. And now I'm doing the deal. But I mean, I think because I'm talking to some people in early recovery and trying to help them with things, and it is just like a long process. It can be a long process of like clearing those cobwebs and kind of like mind over matter, I guess. Or yeah.
Well, and the other thing is about practice is that, what I would say, is that, what happens with our awareness of practice is I think our understanding of that, our knowing of that, deepens. It's like, first of all, because if you're when you first got clean and sober, I mean, you only got clean and sober through practice. That's it. It's like, you can't, it's like whether you understood, conceptually understood that, the importance of that part of that or not, the only way it happens. And that's one of the things that we keep coming back to in our podcast is that, if you don't translate these things into practice, then nothing happens. A good concept is at least useless without practice. and can be dangerous, in my opinion, because what happens, I've realized in my own history, because I can be, it's almost like this is a downside to people who are relatively smart. You go, oh man, I love that idea, and I'm going to think about that idea, and we actually think that idea is going to make us better, but the idea doesn't make us better. And so we actually, with a really sharp concept, if we don't understand the absolute necessity for practice, then what's going to happen is we're going to be overconfident. We're going to think we have something that we don't. It'd be like me watching, somebody play the guitar, and I see how to do that now. And then I go around claiming that I know how to play the guitar. It's like, no,
I have a cousin who just relapsed or recently, and he's been through the whole battery of like just multiple rehabs and sober livings, and he's has a marriage that survived through these multiple recoveries and whatnot, and super brilliant guy, just very vivacious, and just all the good qualities you can imagine, but it's just a demon, this like
it is.
This false sense of control over this thing that's just uncontrollable.
Right.
And to your point, I guess that like a lot of theories, without a practice,
right,
it all kind of falls apart.
It's a practice. I have a friend right now who's I'm planning to go after we finish here. I'm planning to go visit in the hospital. Who the last I heard is not likely to get out of the hospital this time, and it's recurrent years and years and years of back and forth recovery and recurrent relapse. It's extreme. It's very sad, very devastating, and eye-opening to realize. And it's exactly what you said. It's like well, to use the program terminology, the reason we have to be willing to go to any lengths to recover is because the disease doesn't even question that. The disease is willing to go to every length to destroy us.
Today, what's your explanation for how these wonderful people, how the disease is able to get the better of them after so much? They've got a universe of information and negative examples at their fingertips, and it just eludes them.
I mean, all I have for that, Patrick, is just a deep, and I don't mean this, we use the word respect in different ways. If I say I have a deep respect for you, or I have a deep respect for Nelson Mandela, that has to do with agreement and appreciation of what you espouse. But another way of thinking about respect is just full understanding of what is the power of this. And I just have a deep respect for the power of these demons, of these diseases. It's like, I mean, what I believe absolutely, I've come to believe over time, is that whatever version of that it is, whether that be an addiction or an eating disorder or my self-hatred or whatever that is, it's like the best, to use the metaphor that we use of separation, all of them are smarter than we are. All of my diseases, all of my demons, and I don't know, I'm not here to prove I'm not a scientist, I'm not a researcher, I'm not here to prove something. What I'm here to say is what I believe is that if I do not have the humility to say that all of those guys are smarter than I am, and one-on-one with me, they will outsmart me every fucking time. I don't know how long it would be, but it's like, I've been sober for 36 years. It's like, I believe that a big part of that, a giant part of that, is because I live but basically there's no longer a separation between, here's my life and here's my recovery, because my life is my recovery support system is populated. It is my life. It's like, it's the people I know. It's like, it doesn't mean I'm talking to everybody about recovery all the time, but what it means is I am surrounded by recovery. And the idea, and I've just known people who have to do more they're just different. They're up against a challenge where they seem to have to do more on a practical day-to-day basis to maintain that recovery than I do. It's like, I'm again comparing. I'll be grateful. I'm glad, but I also need to be able to say, if that were to become the case for me, am I willing to do whatever it takes to do that? Would I be willing to up? Because that's all I know is that I still believe the things we believe, which is if you do these things, then you can survive. I don't believe people are just not going to, there are people who are not able to make it. But what I do believe, I'm not suggesting, and this is where we can judge people like that, is like, because we use ourselves as the standard of measure. Well, I don't understand why that person didn't do so and so and so and so. Well, that's just me putting myself in their place and saying, I think I could have done it better. It's like, I don't know if I could have not. I can think I would have been able to do it better. But I still believe, that the idea is if you do these things and they're not enough, our philosophy, our belief, the practice of this is, then you have to do more if you want to recover. And all I can offer somebody there is to support them to do more. And some people, I don't even think it's not a conscious thing. They're not willing. It's just like, my humility says, I don't know what it's like to be up against something that powerful. I know what it's like to be up against mine. And I know that it was going to overpower me and would overpower me if I didn't have the support that I have. But as far as I can tell, what my friend in the hospital is up against and what your friend who's relapsing is up against is not something that I actually know. And so it's I really work hard to not have that, to let go of any part of me that's judging that and just saying, but I hold fast to the idea that I still believe through practice there's a way.
Well, 36 years out, you're still very in touch with and you have a healthy respect for what we're up against,
Gee, no kidding. Yeah. It's
well, my heart goes out to, your friend. You're seeing him later today?
I hope so. Yeah, that's my plan. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'll see my cousin anytime soon. He lives in I think he lives in Texas. I'm not sure which part of Texas currently, but last time I saw him, it was my first year of recovery, and we went to a meeting, and yeah. So scary though. It's when I talk to somebody else who's still struggling, the memories come right back,
Oh yeah.
I'm sure I'm traumatized still on some level. Yeah.
Well, and I think that the whole point, if we look at, we can plug that into what we're talking about today with that's a scary experience that plugs into our fears. But with emotional sobriety, we want to practice that, the thing that Allen and I always call, positive opportunism, and say, okay, well, those are opportunities for me to refurbish anything that seems like it's worn down a little bit, or strengthen something that we need, because there's, all of those lines in Alcoholics Anonymous that are so cliche that people sometimes will roll their eyes at. One of the things I say is, they're cliche because they've been repeated so much, because they're wisdom. And there before the grace of God go I is one of them. Yeah. It's like I don't know what circumstances. It's like I'm sitting there. I'm in my little conference room in there. You asked me what I had to offer 36 years into this, and so, I always have a even when it's not about beating the crap out of myself, I always have a little critiquing guy in there going like well, I'm not sure what you said had anything to do with any wisdom. It's like I'm going like, nah, I don't know that it's wisdom either. I think it's just respect for the fact that there's so much we don't know. And I think one of the things I'm getting in touch with in this conversation is how important it is that I respect the fact that I can know a lot. I can know a lot about your addiction by knowing about my addiction, but I can't know what it's like to be you and your addiction. Mm-hmm. And the same with your cousin or with my friend. It's like, we don't know. So if that's, I think saying, humility is as close as I can get to wisdom on that one, I think.
Can I tell you about a experience with fear I had recently in regards to
Hmm.
the show? I was very afraid about a business meeting that me and Alan had a few weeks ago, where I
Hmm.
had to present the numbers for our listener count and kind of like
Hmm.
how we were doing on our social media. And
Hmm.
I just had this pressure to Glenn Ross just like deliver a kick-ass business
Hmm.
speech to you guys. And I just and I feel so inadequate to that task, but like I care a lot about the show. I want to be sure we're always growing, and I want you guys to feel reassured about
Hmm.
the trend of how this thing is evolving. But I was able to assuage that. I don't know if that's the right word, but I was able to feel better about our meeting by just taking some time on a Saturday and just going over all the graphs and the notes that I'd taken over the preceding months. I wasn't able to arrive at the meeting with, like, to use the example again, Alec Baldwin and Glenn Ross
Hmm.
confidence, but I did through preparation, through just taking the time to just look at everything. I was able to, I guess, just to do the thing with you guys. And of course, I mean, I always forget until right when we're doing it that you and Alan are like the most collaborative, encouraging, motivating guys
Hmm.
to work with
Hmm.
possible. So it wasn't like I was going into the lion's den
Yeah.
with this presentation to give, but I was very scared about it, and I did feel very inadequate to
Hmm.
the test. So maybe that's just my long-winded way of saying preparation.
Yeah. Well,
Preparation helped
it's
me get
actually
there.
it's a great example of doing the work with, you don't have to be doing it in the language I would use, but it's like that what we were saying about differentiating between the healthy fear and the neurotic fear. It's like you basically mined out the healthy fear, which is the fear you could do something with, and that's that's what we're always talking about is what can I, what can I actually change here? And you say, well, I can do this work to prepare. It's like, and I would imagine, and maybe you can, but I know that there are people listening who could identify where I have a long history of avoiding preparation because it increases fear, which of course is very illogical. But it's like, I promise you, it's like, I have done it, can do it, we'll do it in the future. It's like, oh, that's not the good way to do it. Well, that's somebody who's not taking advantage of the actual information. And and basically what you're doing is you're practicing the serenity prayer. I'm going to change the things I can change. I can get more tuned into this material and come into that kind of thing. But what I can't change is what I can't change, and we'll have to go from there. It's so yeah, I think that's a great example. The other thing is, it's like, you also remind me too that one success becomes the next problem. Well, one solution becomes the next problem. And it's like, I mean, I don't know how many times in my career that through the years when I was working, especially working with other agencies and working for other people, it's like that I would get to a place where I'm now in a position in which I am challenged to do something that I really never set out to do in the first place. It's like, like if you get in the business of people helping, if you're in an agency and you're going to get promoted, you're going to become a manager. It's like, I never set out to be a manager of people. I'm a clinician. I can write things. I can do that solitary thing of writing, and I can work with clients. But but what you see is people get in, and I think the producer job here is similar to that, where all of a sudden, it's easy to make the assumption that a producer is a marketer. It's like, I don't have to make that assumption. It's like, I love, you're to me, you're a wonderful producer. You keep me honest. You keep, you keep me aware of what it is we're doing. You track, where we're supposed to be when, and during the session. I mean, if we listen to some of our programs back together, I could point out again and again times where I thought, sometimes you made simple comments that said, Patrick, there you go again, bringing us back to task. It's like you're keeping us on track. I mean, you're doing all of that stuff, and not to mention the bigger piece of that, which is the big piece of producing, which is all the technical work that you do. It's like that that I don't know about and don't really want to know about, and Alan sometimes doesn't know about, even though he does want to know about, or at least that's my perception. So, yeah, and the marketing thing, and I think that, and by the way, I think that also falls in the category for both Alan and I too. It's like we have this podcast, and we need to spread the word. We need to market it to people. So by the way, this is a commercial to anybody listening. Please tell everybody to listen to our podcast,
Oh yeah,
because it will make
definitely.
us all feel better. And while you're at it, just, please go buy our books and all this other stuff. But that's not how we think generally. I'm not, I don't, I mean, I can't, I always forget to market I always forget to do even a commercial for my own books when I do a speaking engagement. It's
Well,
like,
strength in numbers, hopefully.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it's like, but, and by the way, in that meeting, I thought you did a great job putting that stuff out there. So,
Oh, thank you. And it's funny what you say about preparation and about how that makes you anxious. For me, it helps
mm-hmm,
to sand off the anxiousness.
mm-hmm,
One of my favorite recovery people, Mark Maron, is similar. He's a stand-up comedian, and
mm-hmm,
he's very anti-preparation.
mm-hmm,
And but just hearing that makes me smile, because it tells me that everybody has their own particular program
mm-hmm.
that allows them to get through the web,
Yep.
and there's no right way or wrong way. There's just the way that works, and
Mm-hmm.
that's different for every person. But yeah, I guess, but I suppose there's a common thread maybe that runs through all of
Well,
us.
it's well. I mean, this is where it gets just offensively simple and corny. It's like we all do our best with what we have. We learn from each other. It's like you make the comment. So I don't know if this will happen or not, but one possibility is, because I definitely registered that preparation helps you alleviate some of your anxiety. I'm going like I'm going. I could consider that possibility. It's like, maybe that would be useful to me. We don't just learn things just didactically from other people. We also just are influenced by being around other people and how they do these things. And then, but the biggest common denominator is, and then get your ass back to the present moment, back to the Eckhart Tolle now, and and enjoy yourself.
It was so much fun to see you and Alan work at the Harmony Hollow
Mm-hmm,
workshop recently,
mm-hmm,
because I got to see you prepare. You were working on your PowerPoint a little bit before, and less so with Alan, but you took to it like a duck to water,
mm-hmm,
and as soon as, like, Alan came out there, and the styles couldn't be more different, right?
mm-hmm,
But like
mm-hmm,
as soon as you because Alan went first, and then you had your section,
mm-hmm,
and the crowd just like opened up right away. They were
mm-hmm,
digging it, and
mm-hmm,
but it was just funny because it's like, I don't know. Would you say that you're operating on impulse a lot when you're up there?
mm-hmm.
Just
Just
yeah.
yeah, it's there's a lot of the preparation for me is that a lot of what I say, in a presentation, I probably said before in similar ways, or even exactly the same way. I always say it's a little bit like I live in Nashville, so I'm kind of influenced by that model. It's like a musician who's going to play. I just don't know what order I'm going to play these songs. But they're most of them are very familiar to me, and
Yeah.
some of them we're going to do a little scatting and kind of jazz it up and make them up as we go along. But it's like, what you saw is it was fun for me, because getting back to doing that after being off the road, not doing a in-person workshop for so many years, it's like it was very good. It was very good to me to realize I could step back into that place, and my flow was still there. It's and that's, I love doing that. And it's like, um I had a guy I worked with PST Healthcare. I did workshops with them for a long time, and one of the nicest compliments. I don't think he meant it as a compliment necessarily, but one of the nicest compliments I got is because it's a very content heavy kind of company with their training programs for the most part. But my stuff is very process oriented, and one of the things where I was going to have to cancel because of illness in the family at one point, and he said, well, he said, ordinarily we just have somebody come in and substitute for somebody when they can't do that. He said, we can't do that for you. And I said, well, why can't you do that? And he said, because I had my manual, I actually, had a manual for my workshop and stuff. He said, I've seen you work. He said, you do 7 hours of stand up. He said, he said, I wouldn't put anybody in that place to have to try to do that. And I thought, like I said, I don't know if it was, I think he was telling me a little bit of a problem that he had, but I took it on as like, well, that's nice, because it is, it's going to be what it is. Intuitive, I guess, is as a word I would use.
I've got a good question for you, or I think it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Does your job ever scare you still? Did it ever? I mean, because my job
used to
scares
scare the
me
crap
every time.
out of it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, public speaking was the well, I mean, no, I can remember when I first got out of graduate school and started seeing clients, as a credentialed therapist. It's like, no, I remember talking about it. That's where the should monster was still, strong and working with me, always constantly telling me, his favorite rhetorical question was, what makes you think you could do this work? So, I lived with that guy breathing down my neck. But when it came to public speaking in particular, I was a magician for years from childhood on, but in my young, late adolescence and early adulthood, I actually did perform, professionally some for as a magician. And so entertaining was a part of what I did pretty naturally too. But I wanted to be a speaker, and it's like, and I would want to get those gigs, but when I would get them, I would literally make myself sick before every time. I would literally throw up before I would go on for any of these things, because in my thinking would be, why am I doing this? This is horrible. I don't want to do this. So one of the things I did, and maybe somebody can make use of this, I finally made a deal with myself. I had this little sit down conversation in which I recognized that all of the feedback I'd ever gotten from being a public speaker was positive. And I could, I'm not saying there wasn't anybody ever didn't like something I said or didn't like, but it was very rare, if at all. It's one of my favorite criticisms on an evaluation one time was, he's not as funny as he thinks he is. And I thought, I remember sitting there with the sponsor, we were looking through the things, the sponsor of the workshop. And I said, yeah, I'm exactly as funny as I think I am. That person just didn't think I was funny. But I finally got to the point where I had this one of my first experiences with that little tough loving recovery voice. I think I didn't name it that then, but I have since, that basically made a deal, said, okay, here's Thom. You can go back to feeling nervous and scared. Well, everybody can be a little nervous, but scared of public speaking. When you start to get some indication of any kind of pattern, even a slight pattern of negative feedback you get from doing this. But as long as you continue to get positive feedback, you don't get to do this, is what he said to me. It's like, it's like, it's ridiculous. You do not, you do not get to sit here and be afraid that you're getting ready to make a total fool of yourself. And because it wasn't like, I'm afraid I'm a little off. It was, it was the straight A student that was afraid of failing, and it's like, have you ever failed? No, haven't. And so all these years later, I still do that. I get nervous, I get scared sometimes, but then I remind myself, it's like, no, and if I start to get bad reviews, bad feedback and stuff like that, then, what I tell myself is to relieve my anxiety is then you can quit. You don't have to do it anymore. It's like, or you can deal with it, but it's like, I really do. And the takeaway for that, for anybody listening is do yourself a favor and look at the facts. Look at what's real. It's like, it's like, sure. If you get a little criticism, do you respond to the criticism? Good. And then are you better for that? It's like, I've certainly, I'm not saying I've been without anybody critiquing or giving me ideas or thoughts or what I could do better. And it's like one of the things I've gotten really good at. And well, you get this as a writer, editing is a wonderful process. It's like, boy, the sooner you can get over being a prima donna as a writer and just really work with a good editor, it's amazing how another person, another perspective can make something you're working on so much better.
Right. And I think it's fair to say, most people would agree rewriting is easier than writing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Oh,
easy
yeah.
it's easier to have that piece of clay, than to
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, whatever, dig that clay out of the ground. I don't know
Yeah,
what the
just
metaphor is.
just to create it it's just but of course, no, that's something we might want to have that conversation sometime too, because sometimes that's the easiest part, because what we're doing is we're just taking dictation.
Yeah.
We're just
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
the one of the things I will do this some other time maybe, but it's like in Embracing Fear, the seed to this whole Embracing Fear book was I was 20 something years out of college. I after I wrote the Self-Forgiveness Handbook, I had been invited back to my college to give a lecture on it. And so I had not been back there in a long time, and I was walking across the campus the night before I was going to do this, and it's I try to explain it as best I can in the book, but it's like, it's all I know is that the piece that came to me at that time was not me, or it was not a part of me that was a part of my conscious self. It was a lecture. It became the seed, like I said, the seed of Embracing Fear about, and it's just called, well, here, it's real short. I'm going to read it.
Yeah.
Whatever or whoever the source of the voice, it's more like receiving complete packages of thoughts than it is like actually hearing a voice. It's not a very auditory experience. This is definitely, it was definitely with me that night as I walked across the campus. It began by saying, "Thom, you are still scared. Fear has too much power in your life." And then it said this, and this is the little piece: "Pay close attention. Listen carefully. Let's look at what happens when fear is in charge. When fear is in charge, you can never fully relax, let your guard down, be your true self. You cannot open up because you are afraid of how people will respond if they were to meet the real you. When fear is in charge, you simply cannot take that chance. Fear will not allow honesty. Fear despises spontaneity, and fear refuses to believe in you. Fear may mean well, but it ruins everything by overprotecting you, insisting that you stay hidden and keep a low profile, promising that your time is coming sometime later. Fear is bold, but insists that you be timid. Take a chance and there will be hell to pay. Fear will call on its dear friend shame to meet you on the other side of your risk-taking, to tell you that you should not have done that. Fear will trip you, tackle you, smother you, do whatever it takes to cause you to hesitate, to stop you. In this way, fear is fearless. Fear will remain in charge for as long as you let it. It will never volunteer to step down, to relinquish its authority. Your assignment is to live a life that is not ruled by fear. To do this, you must be able to identify at any given time exactly what the fear is telling you, or rather threatening you with, and to disobey its instructions. Every morning when you awake, make a conscious decision to remain in charge of your own life. Fear cannot occupy the space in which you stand. I like to repeat that one. Fear cannot occupy the space in which you stand. Fear cannot force you out of that position of authority, but it can, if you let it, scare you away.
That is so beautiful, Thom.
It's like I just scribbled that down back in my hotel room as fast as I could, because all I know is I didn't write that. It's like, and I and later, long before when I had an agent who was interested in picking me up as a client, that's what we started with, and we ended up turning it into a book. So it's
well, man, I just love to hear about that. That kind of like, it's something you knew so innately that it was almost unconscious the way that it flowed
it was
out.
just like I say, back in my younger days, I would have Well, that's an interesting too. I would have to be able to explain it to myself in order to be okay. It's like now I got the shrug. I go like, I don't know where it came from. Did it come from, a spirit guide? Did God write me a letter directly? Did it come from a deep unconscious part? I don't know. I just know that it arrived all in a one, and you probably get that. You get the whole package. It's like, it isn't like somebody's giving you dictation and you're writing it down. It's like, it's just knowing. And
I'll take it when I can get it.
It's a powerful experience.
Well, this was a wonderful episode. We will see our beloved audience next week.
Okay. And Alan maybe come back around sometime.
Yeah, he'll pop up. He's always with us.
I know. Oh no, I don't know about that. Oh, that seems creepy. Okay.
All right. Take care, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Out.
Tend your life, tend your myth. Cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.